Imagine walking through a medieval town square on a cold morning. The streets are crowded with peasants, merchants, and curious nobles, all jostling for a glimpse of what is about to unfold. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, livestock, and burning wood. At the far end of the square, a wooden scaffold rises like a grim monument against the grey sky. Today, someone will die, and the entire town has gathered for the spectacle. Public executions were the ultimate form of medieval entertainment. Unlike private justice, which might quietly punish a criminal behind closed doors, executions were staged for maximum effect. They were rituals of power, warning, and morality, performed in full view of the community. Life itself became a performance, with the condemned cast in the role of villain, and the crowd as both witness and participant. The condemned, sometimes a thief, sometimes a heretic, was brought forward, shackled and humiliated. Some were forced to wear a dunce-like mask or a paper crown, symbols of shame meant to amplify their disgrace. Children clung to their parents' skirts, eyes wide, while adults whispered warnings and bets were placed on the speed of death or the condemned's reactions. Market vendors sold bread, ale, and even small souvenirs from past executions, turning the event into a grotesque carnival. Execution methods were varied and horrifying. Hanging could be slow and torturous, with the victim's neck stretched painfully until life slipped away. Beheadings were supposedly swift, yet poorly trained executioners could require multiple strikes of the axe. For the worst crimes, treason, heresy, or witchcraft, the condemned might face the rack, the breaking wheel, or burning at the stake. Each method was calculated not just to kill, but to terrify, to create a spectacle that would linger in the minds of onlookers long after the crowd had dispersed. The executioner was a figure of paradoxical power. Shunned by society, yet indispensable, he moved through the crowd like a shadow. His hooded face hid the skill and precision required to carry out these acts, and his hands delivered death with chilling efficiency. Executioners were both feared and, strangely, respected. Their presence reminded everyone that the law was absolute, and that life was fragile. As the condemned faced their fate, the crowd became part of the performance. Some screamed, fainted, or prayed, their reactions amplifying the drama. Others watched with fascination, a mix of horror and curiosity tightening their stomachs. Families told children to obey, traders continued their business, and nobles observed from a distance, all united in the macabre spectacle of life and death. Public executions were more than just punishment. They were tools of social control. Rulers used them to assert power, reminding the populace that crime, rebellion, or heresy would meet with brutal consequences. The more elaborate or prolonged the execution, the stronger the warning. In a society constantly threatened by famine, war, and disease, these displays reinforced the fragile social order. Yet despite their brutality, executions also had a strange, ritualistic beauty. The condemned often had moments to speak, pray, or confess, creating fleeting instances of dignity amid terror. Some faced death with courage, turning the event into a dramatic performance of their own. These moments captivated the audience, providing not just fear, but also a moral lesson, a warning to obey the law, adhere to the church, and respect authority. The sites themselves became infamous. Scaffoldings, gallows, and public squares bore the memory of countless deaths, their names whispered in fear for generations. To step onto these grounds was to confront mortality directly, to witness the power of the state and the fragility of human life. Execution sites were markers of authority, morality, and history, etched into the landscape and the collective consciousness. As centuries passed, public executions began to evolve. Authorities moved them into more controlled environments, reducing the carnival-like spectacle. Yet the fascination with death remained. Literature, theatre, and eventually modern media drew inspiration from these events, reflecting humanity's enduring fascination with mortality, justice, and the extremes of human cruelty. Walking away from the scaffold that day, the crowd would carry home a story of terror and morality. Children grew up with vivid images of pain and courage, while adults were reminded of the consequences of defiance. The spectacle had served its purpose: to entertain, to frighten, and to teach. In the shadow of the scaffold, the harsh realities of medieval life were made painfully, memorably clear. Public executions were dark entertainment in the truest sense. They transformed crime into performance, punishment into spectacle, and death into communal experience. They remind us that in the Middle Ages, mortality was not abstract. It was immediate, visible, and theatrical. And though we may recoil in horror today, there is a grim fascination in understanding how entire communities once came together to witness the final act of a life, staged for the lesson it imparted and the fear it instilled. In the end, these executions were more than just endings. They were mirrors of society itself, brutal, hierarchical, and relentlessly human. The scaffold, the crowd, the condemned, and the executioner all played their roles in a drama that was both horrifying and captivating. A stark reminder that in the medieval world, death was never private. It was public, and often a dark form of entertainment.